This movie is going to be entitled Optimizing Final Cut Pro 10.4 for Color Correction. The first thing that I'm going to point to you is that there's now a color inspector. So if you press Command 6, we can go to this color inspector. And we have a variety of color tools that are available for us during the color correction process. If you've worked in Final Cut Pro 10.3, you're very used to the color board. And this is the default color effect that's available to you. You can see it listed down here. And in fact, if I go to the exposure pane and make a subtle adjustment here with these pucks, I'm actually right now decreasing the shadows and increasing the highlights. If we head over to the inspector, or the video inspector, you'll see that that color board effect is added. So first off the gate in terms of optimization, as someone who works in multiple NLEs, I tend to gravitate towards your three-way color corrector. It's just something that I tend to gravitate towards color wheels. It's just something that I'm very used to using in multiple applications. So let me delete the color board and draw your attention to Final Cut's preferences. Under the preferences, if you go to the editing tab, there is now a preference to set the default correction to be whatever you want. So I'm going to set that to be color wheels. If I now just click or minus with the X and press Command 6 to go to my color inspector, you'll see that color wheels are showing. It might look slightly different. That's just because I have my color wheels here in a single view that has it as a pane-based system, but you might see it here as all wheels. To further this, if you actually press Command 5 to go to the inspector, the default effect in Final Cut happens to be the color board. So if I go to all, one of the things is here, you'll see the color board at the very top. You can set this effect to whatever you want. And in terms of color correction, I would just recommend that you set it to whichever color correction effect you use the most often. So I'm just going to go here to color. You'll see here that some of the same effects available to you here in the color inspector, color curves, color wheels, as well as your hue saturation curves are all available. I'm just going to choose to control click and make the color curves the default video effect. And now the shortcut for this will apply the color curves to my video clip. So just as an example, if I head over to the edit menu, you'll notice that add color curves can be added with an Option E. So just pressing Option E, you can see here that a color curves has been applied to the clip here in the timeline. We can even take this a step further. I'm going to press Command Z to undo that last operation. I'm going to head to my Final Cut menu and go to my commands, where I'm going to choose to customize. So a lot of these color correction controls that were added as of 10.4 haven't been mapped to your keyboard. You can see this by going down here to the command groups, over to effects, and you'll take a look here where we can see that we can add the color board effect, the curves, the hue saturation, and color wheels, and there's no modifier keys assigned to them. So what I would highly recommend is that you map your keyboard using most of the commands associated with color correction. Here's a few ideas to get you started. I'm actually going to hold down Shift Option, and the reason I'm doing that is it just tends to be an area of the keyboard using these two modifier keys that hasn't been used that much. So I'm going to assign my color correction effect or color curves effect to Shift Option C. It won't allow me to overwrite my default keyboard, so I'll make a copy and call this my CC for 10.4 and press OK. I'm just going to then further that by going Shift Option and add the hue saturation effect to an H, and then just add the color wheels effects to Shift Option W. So now I have 3 keyboard commands to add each of those effects. Now I want to take this a step further for a few things that you should totally use in your keyboard. One is going to the previous and next color correction pane. Panes are originated in the color board. That's what separates the exposure from your color effects from being able to adjust saturation. And there's a way to quickly go between each of the panes. I'm going to say that Shift Option 5 is going to allow me to go to the next pane. while Shift Option 4 is going to allow me to go to the previous pane. Now, one other set of controls that can be extremely useful, in fact, there's a lot, but one has to do with just color correction effects. When you start to add either a color wheels effect or a hue and saturation curves, these will get stacked inside the video inspector. And you'll want to just go quickly between each of these color correction effects and then make adjustments to them in the color inspector. Well, what you want to do here is just map that ability to navigate between the multiple color correction effects. And how we'll do that is, you'll see here, under color correction, you can see here the select next color correction control, and you can see the select the previous color correction control. You'll see an option for select the next color correction effect and select the next previous color correction effect. I'm just going to map the next color correction effect to Shift Option 7 and the previous effect to Shift Option 6. And now I have a pretty robust keyboard for color correction. I've skipped over a few things here, but let's just see how we can put this into practicality. I'll press Save to save my keyboard, and I'll close out this window. Here in the Final Cut timeline, I'm going to press C. That's your ability to select a clip. And if you remember, I'm just going to go to the video inspector first of all, make sure there are no current effects on the clip, so you can see that here. Let's apply a color wheels effect by using Shift Option W. We just mapped that to the keyboard. Remember, Shift Option C allowed us to select color curves, and Shift Option W allows us to add yet another wheels, Shift Option H allowing us the hue and saturation curves. Now, hue and saturation curves is currently selected, and if I go to the color inspector, I'll just press Command 6 to do that here. Just notice that is what shows up here. By the way, another new feature is that if you press Control Tab, you can move through the various inspector items here, which is quite awesome. So the other keyboard shortcut that we navigated is to move between these effects. The Shift Option 6 happens to be the previous effect. Shift Option 7 happens to be the next effect of what I've mapped it to. And then if we actually then Control Tab over into the color inspector, you can see here that that is what's available. Now, what happens for the moving between the panes that I mapped to the Shift Option 4 and 5 keys? That comes available in a single view. So in my color wheels here, if I change the view to single wheels, you can see here the tab-based system, or the pane-based system in this case. Shift Option 4 moving back, Shift Option 5 moving forward. By the way, if you extend your view of the color inspector, just to do that here, I'm going to close the browser and extend it. Just a little thing that you should note is that you'll be able to have or see your 4 color correction wheels here side by side rather than from top to bottom. Last but not least, just keep in mind that this is also repeatable for curve-based effects. If I came here and decided to add some curves right now and view them in a single curve view, keep in mind you can navigate between those panes really easily, or of course, as we know, navigate between each of the tabs of the inspector. So hopefully this gives you some ideas of optimizing Final Cut Pro 10.4 for color correction in a variety of ways. I'm Nick Carraz from Creative 111. Thanks for tuning in.